welcome back to the What the Falk Sunderland Review podcast that's full of chocolate, pints and Christmas cheer. It's been a very enjoyable post-Christmas as 4,000 Sunderland fans made the trip to Yorkshire to see Lee Johnson's Sunderland absolutely dismantle Gary McSheffrey's Doncaster Rovers. We weren't going to do a pod, but it was such a good performance. We thought, well, bloody hell, why not? So some of us might be a bit worse for wear. Some of us are completely stone cold sober, but nonetheless, we're going to go for it. Joining me to wax lyrical, hopefully, about Sunderland's performance is Dave Lawrence, first and foremost. Dave, you normally join us from a pub. Are you still joining us from a pub?
I am indeed. I'm upstairs in the flat, but I've left my mum and dad working for half an hour while we crack on.
And how was your Christmas?
It was all right, mate. Yeah. Obviously had a little bit of work to do and stuff like that, but yeah, there's still people out celebrating, which is good for the pub and good for the business. But yeah, it was pretty low key and pretty nice.
Same. Second of all, Brad, obviously you don't normally join us from a pub, but I believe you're joining us from near a pub. How was your Christmas, mate? All right?
The best one I've ever had, mate. My little boy's 10-year-old, and it's the first one where I've had him Christmas Eve. So yeah, it was the best one that I've ever had. But,
does he still believe in Santa?
Yeah, and I think this will probably be his last one, maybe, give or take. So just to get that with him was the best. And then me and the missus have got a new one due in April, so I've got it all to do again.
Well, for me, we were talking about the Santa thing the other day, and I know we're here to talk about Sunderland, but I must say that we're thinking the other day, when do you find out Santa's not real? And I found out when my dad left the price on the back of me Sunderland Sabitio team when I was about 7, had Joseph's $9.99 on the back. So I think I found out in the best possible way because Joseph was a class toy shop. And for a while, I thought maybe Santa lived in Joseph's, but apparently not so. Dave, I'm going to come to you first. A very comfortable and enjoyable 3-0 win today for the lads. How are you feeling a few hours after full time?
Yeah, very, very good. I was very confident going into the game, to be honest. I think we needed a few little bits. We needed Ross Stewart to score. I love his all-round contribution in general, as we know. But yeah, it was nice to see him sort that penalty away quite comfortably.
Yeah.
I think Sky said earlier that he hadn't scored in 9 games, something like that. I don't know how true that is. Doesn't sound right to me.
It's not.
They corrected themselves. They said didn't score 9, and Super Kev came and said no, he scored 1 in 9. So I think it was the 1 in 9.
But I mean, that put 2 goals behind leading scorer, so that tells you everything. The fact that we're still winning games without him scoring, and I think it's something we all attested to at the beginning of the season, how much he would bring to our game, and he does. I love the bloke. We all know how much I love the bloke. I rant and rave about him every time we're on. Pritchard, good, starting to prove with his fitness and everything that he's a cut above. Embleton was pretty good today. Gooch, to be honest, I couldn't find a weak performer, if I'm honest. Nice to see Corey Evans back in there, just slipping straight in. Yeah, looks it's not much to whinge about, is there?
It feels weird, doesn't it? There's very few negatives to pull out the bag with it, but it was a really good performance. And like I say, we weren't going to do a podcast because when you start doing previews and reviews, over Christmas period, you tend to lose your Christmas period from my perspective. But when you win that game, it's kind of what you want to do is talk about the match. But you touched on Sky Sports there before. Now, obviously, I've had a few Sky Sports guys on here, and they've been very good to me in my time doing the podcast. But they've got a lot of stuff wrong today. Apparently, we've been out of the Premier League for 4 years because we spent 4 years in League One. Do the maths, lads. That's a little bit wrong. It's actually been 5, and you did the maths actually, come to think of it, and still got it wrong. But nonetheless, I'm not going to complain about Sky Sports because I might want one of the presenters at some point. Really comfortable, like I say, enjoyable to the point where we wanted to do a podcast today when we hadn't planned to. But how are you feeling in the aftermath of the game?
I'm over the moon, mate, to be honest. It's like one of them games where you just did not want it to end because you just seen every single player. They were playing with that little bit swagger. They were just enjoying themselves. Even at 1-0, I was like, being a Sunderland fan, you're thinking, right, we need to put this to bed because they're starting to get a little bit too comfortable too early. But the second goal, I mean, I know their defence was absolutely honking, to be honest. But that little move from Pritchard and great pick out from Flanagan, and then they get the goal like 5 minutes before half time, just changes everything, doesn't it?
Yeah. They
came out second half, first 2 or 3 minutes, they got at us with that big lad up front who came on. We just put them to bed 5 minutes in, and from then it was, are we going to score anymore? And I think the best goal of the game was the one that got chalked off because what a team goal that would have been if Denver Humes was allowed. So yeah, there's no complaints from me. I texted you off air and I said, I think if you want to be picky, about any negatives is probably Doyle's yellow card. And that has been ultra picky, is because he's on 4 now, so one more in the next 3 or 4 games before the reset, he's going to get suspended. But that's with his inexperience, and that is me being ultra picky if I want to be negative. But from the back to the front, I just couldn't fault all the lads. It was just near perfect game to watch from my point of view.
Yeah, and a lot of people mentioned about Doncaster having a lot of players out and a lot of young lads at the back, and I completely get that. But I counted the players we had out, good 6 or 7 that have been out, and I've seen a lot of Doncaster fans like saying, was Sunderland to Sunderland and this, that, and the other. And I get we have a higher quality of player, but it's good to see that even with all our injuries and the fact that they had a few young lads, it felt like we had another 3 or 4 gears. I don't think that was a training match at points. We were that comfortable, if we're completely honest with each other. You never feel massively comfortable with Sunderland, but I think everyone else watching that was kind of like, oh, well, Sunderland's in cruise control here. We were going forward at will. I cannot remember a shot that they had. Like I said, it got to half time. I was disappointed it wasn't 3 or 4. And I'm probably, if I'm being picky, disappointed it wasn't 5 or 6, because we looked a step above with players out. And I know it was a young and inexperienced and injury hit Doncaster side, but it's about time we looked like we were a step above when things like that happen, because too many times we'll come up against an injury hit young squad that'll end up fluking a draw against us, or we'll duff it in the last minute. And that's been our Achilles heel for the past 3 seasons, under Parkinson and under Ross and under Johnson towards the back end of last season. So it's nice to see us just basically stuffing teams and being disappointed with things like daft yellow cards and the fact that we didn't score 5 or 6. That probably sums up how you feel, doesn't it?
I mean, I think second half, I think they made one chance where Hoffman's at the save, and to be fair, it was a good save. He got a good left hand up in the air to stop it. But apart from that, we weren't under any pressure at all. But that's where credit needs to come to sort of like the players like Hoffman, where they don't have a lot to do. Like, he's still switched on when a shot's going to come at him,
Yeah.
For me, like I can't really complain about any aspect of that game. Everything about it was just good to watch. And like, you looked at the time, and it was like 82, 83 minutes. And I was like, I wish we had another half an hour in this game, because it was just, you never wanted it to end.
It was fun. Performances like that are just fun. And I very rarely say that about Sunderland. But Dave, I'm going to come back to you regarding performances. We've kind of touched on it. Basically, I think Brad's even said it. There were some very, very good performances across the park today. Embleton got man of the match from Sky Sports, but I think across the board, you couldn't put a player lower than 7.5. But if you had to pick one player out, I'm going to pigeonhole you and say you've got to pick one player out. Who was your standout for today?
That is hot, Graham. That's a horrible question, because I give him plenty, and he still frustrates the life out of me. And he did do a couple of things wrong today, but for how much I'm not that impressed with him often because he makes the wrong decision, I'm probably going to go Lyndon Gooch. I thought he was very, very good. I tell you what, everything about Sunderland at the minute, everything that's going right, it shows you that for this level, they're good enough to comfortably win games. And the simple fact of the matter is, it's confidence, it's swagger, it's that little bit of big balls, basically. We've touched on it plenty of times. And yeah, Gooch, I mean, he must be a defender's. I think people should be defending him better, because he is quite, the way his body language is and stuff on the ball is, as a coach, you'd like to think that you could pick up on how to defend against him easily. But the one thing that he's adding to his bow is he's going on the outside as well. So yeah, I'd just about go Gooch, I think.
I'm going to come to you next, Brad. I didn't realise I was on mute there.
I thought it was my phone there, and Dave put in the chat saying we're on mute, and I was sat thinking, oh God, I'm going to have to go.
It's definitely Christmas, isn't it? Jeez, I'm on mute. You're in the car. Oh man. I just seen your lips moving. I was like, oh God, he's going to ask me a question here. I'm just going to have to think, right, what is a very Graham question? And let's see if I can guess what the fuck he's going to say. Oh, as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, we are 100% professional and prepared for this one. Basically, what I was saying, what my lips were saying, because obviously you can't lip read, as we can tell. Who was your man of the match? There was a lot of choice today, but obviously I think everyone has their own, doesn't they?
My man of the match today, and I said it at even half time when I was on the phone with my granddad, was Dan Neal. And I know, obviously, when he's on Sky, and there's been these links with Burnley lately, so they're like, it's going to be like focused on him a lot. But when you watch him play, like we said last week on the pod, he just makes that extra little bit of space to himself. That 30-40 yard diag today to Embleton's feet was like years above where he should be. And when you watch him, like usually you say people look like they're playing on ice when they're slipping over all the time. But Dan Neal plays like a figure skater. He just glides past people. That's the way I can describe him.
So smooth,
like it's like effortless from him. But I mean, without them even testing us very much, it was nice to see him get forward a little bit as well. And like a special mention for me would go to Bailey White, because I think he's made that right centre half, right back position his own. He got forward first half, and I think he put a little ball across the floor to Ross Stewart, who laid it back to Diaco, who got blocked. But like, I think Bailey White, we're starting to see Bailey White as the player that we had on loan before we signed him permanently. We're starting to see that little bit of confidence from him. He's had the armband a few times, and I think that's helped him as well. He's got a young lad in Diaco just ahead of him, so he's like, he knows that he's got a lot of responsibility on him. And I enjoy seeing White. But for me today, Dan Neal, that was almost the perfect performance. All he needed was a goal, and a goal for me.
He's just, I mean, you don't want to wax lyrical about him in that, because like you felt like Sky Sports again. I'm not picking on you, Sky Sports, I promise, but they mentioned about him going and people looking at him and stuff like that. But I think I'd like to think that we know a good young player when we see them. We said stuff about Pickford, we said stuff about Henderson. I know it was a different division, and I'm certainly not saying he's anywhere near the level of Jordan Henderson. I think that would be obscene if he got even close to it, because Jordan Henderson is world class and has been for seasons on end. But you just look at him and you think, at the very, very least, you've got to be potentially low-end Premiership. And that's me probably being a bit harsh, because I think if he continues at the trajectory and the way that he plays, like you said, like a figure skater, he's silky, and I think Danny Collins called him silky. He is like that, and sometimes you just see players and you think you're 2-3 steps ahead of everyone on this pitch. And today it was just so evident. I was hoping one of you were going to say Dan Neal. My man of the match, for people who are wondering, was Alex Pritchard, but Dan Neal, I'm splitting hairs. I'll go Pritchard because you went Dan Neal, Brad. But I'll come to you, Dave, with this one in regard to Dan Neal. He was awesome, like absolutely awesome again. Sky Sports did seem to push the issue, but that is their job. I get it. The truth is, people are starting to notice the kid. There's rumours of a 3 million bid coming from Burnley. How concerned are you that we could potentially lose him?
I think, firstly, the reason that I wouldn't have said anything about Dan Neal was because I'm absolutely adamant that Sean Dyche listens to this. I'm confident it's just his type of show. I'm confident it is. So, yeah, Dan Neal's shit, by the way. Yeah, listen, any good young English footballer should be viewed upon by any Premier League club or top-end Championship club. So, yes, I have no doubt that there's interest in and around him. I think, we'll put it out there. Two things. This is where having local lads coming through the ranks helps you, because I can't for a second imagine in January, unless we're talking like a Liverpool, a Man United, an Arsenal, a Chelsea, a City, who even then I think would loan him back to us. I think if we're in with a shout of automatic promotion, Dan Neal stays till at least the end of the season. And I would like to think that he's got good enough people around him. Your natural progression is to go and play Championship football next season, not Premier League football, another year. You've got to remember he's a young lad, and he can go and do that with his home club. I think unless it's ridiculous in January, I don't think we lose him. But that is a bold statement, and I know it's a bold statement. So, yeah, and the likes of Burnley and stuff, no disrespect to Burnley, they're obviously 2 divisions higher than us. but surely not. Surely if you can keep going through the leagues with Sunderland, a couple of years in the Championship, 2 seasons maybe, and then yes, if a big club comes in, as in like an Everton, a Spurs, a Villa, someone like that, and we're still not in the promised land, so to speak, then yeah, maybe that's the right time. But that's just my opinion on it.
That's what I said to you a few weeks ago. I said it's like he wants to progress with the club, and if one of these big boys come in from and offer him silly money, you can't begrudge him if it does happen that way. But I think signing his new 4-year deal was a big statement for him as a player and what he wants from his progression, but for us as a club as well, to say that we're going to promote the youth and we're going to show all these other young lads that there is a way to progress your career. And Dan Neal's the prime example of it. I think they touched on Sky Sports again, was mentioning Sky, because obviously we're on Sky. That's where we watched it. But Kevin Phillips said he's spoke to him a few times and he's Sunderland through and through. And I think Dan Neal understands, seeing people like he's played with in the academies, the likes of Sam Greenwood, for example. He's went to one club, then he went to Arsenal, then he's went to Leeds, and he's still not broke his way into the first team. And like Barley Mumba went to Norwich. He's not getting a look in now. I think he's seen that because they were all around his age, give or take a year or two. So I think that might be helping us. On the other hand, to say right where Dan wants to stay with Sunderland, if you know what I mean, it's a different way to look at it.
I hope so, and it's a valid point, because obviously Sam Greenwood, I mean, Leeds are playing 15, 16-year-olds, and yet you still can't see Sam Greenwood getting anywhere other than like sporadic appearances from the bench. I think he made his league debut the other day, but Leeds, I don't think it's a secret that they have like absolutely honours of injuries. Barley Mumba, I kind of forgot that he was at Norwich because I haven't seen him for a few weeks. That's another really valid point. For me, maybe the concern, but maybe it's just me being very, very, very cautious, is Charlie Methvin was there again today, and there's still questions over how much those men own in the club. And I'm swaying towards maybe I'm panicking over and out, because I'm trying to be more hopeful in my old age. But there is a concern that if they've got more than we think they've got, and that Methvin keeps turning up at matches, I wouldn't necessarily say I think he knows he's not that welcome. Makes me wonder how much he's actually got left in the club, and the same with Donald. But you've got to think, I think Kirill's probably the majority stakeholder. Worst case scenario, he's the majority stakeholder. It'll be up to him whether Daniel goes or stays, and Daniel signed a new 4-year contract. So is Elliot Embleton. So I think I'll give the benefit of the doubt to them in this case. I think bold statement, like Dave said, but I think we can hang on to him for at least the end of the season and get us up. And if we get up and get into the Championship, then you've got more reasons to throw them for staying. You can say, look, go to the Premier League if you want, sit on the bench for a few weeks and maybe get into the team, or help us push on in the Championship, have a good season in the Championship, and then prove that you're good enough for the Premier League. It's wishful thinking, but it's also got a bit of realism in it as well. I talked about how positive today was, but there has been one huge negative that's came from today, to be honest, and it'll probably take us on to the final few questions. But Nathan Broadhead's been excellent. I said the other week, I think I asked the question, is he our best since Josh Madger at this level? I said yes, probably in terms of natural ability. The likelihood is Brady's going to be out until the end of the season, at the very least, or the majority of the season. How big of a blow is losing Nathan Broadhead?
Oh, it's massive. When he got injured the other night, my granddad said, even if it's a couple of weeks, we need another striker anyway, just in case. But now it's been announced 3-month minimum. It's massive. I mean, judging on today's performance, and you try to take it into isolation, that would he have made much of a difference today? No, because Doncaster were that poor. But then we've got the likes of Chef Wed coming up like very soon before we can make any signings, and they're the ones where it's going to be testing, can the other lads step up? I mean, your natural possible replacement today would have been possibly O'Brien, but then he's got COVID, and with COVID going around as it is, it's going to affect us like in the next few weeks. It's guaranteed there's going to be players missing. So yeah, we are going to need to get a new striker, because Broadhead every podcast that we listen to, and Dave and yourself and Danny and Frankie, they always talk about how vital Nathan Broadhead is, and without him, I know Stuart scored today and it was a penalty. I do think we need that extra goal scorer.
Yeah, me too.
And my granddad actually threw up he threw something into me, which made me think, and he said, would you recall Will Grigg? And not just because for our benefit, to get him away from Rotherham, because they're going to be up there with us. It's either going to be, we've got him on loan and we've got Josh Hawkes on loan. And if you can't bring someone in who's going to be better than them two, you recall them. If you don't feel that the next player you bring in is going to be better than what you've already got, you recall them two, in my opinion. And I agreed with my granddad saying it, even though when he mentioned Will Grigg, I was like, what are you on about? I just thought he was in his 93-year-old age. I was like, why are you mentioning him? But I could sort of see what he was on about. You're taking a striker away from a team that's going to be up there with us. And even if it means him coming on the bench and he might get 3 or 4 goals between now and the end of the season, that could be the difference. But yeah, we're going to miss him.
Yeah.
And I mean, we spoke about him last week when you asked, will Everton recall him in January? Well, there's your answer now. No. And he's going to stay with us through his rehab, getting back to being fit. It could be in the long term. Short term, it's horrific. But in the long term, it could be, he might see it as how much we take care of him to get him on a long-term basis.
I was saying that before, Dave, and I want to throw the question to you. And obviously, it's dependent on the fee, which we'll never really know because it's got nothing to do with us and how many fees are undisclosed these days. But Broadhead, 3-month minimum. So that pretty much puts him out of the picture up until maybe the last few important games, which by that point, hopefully we're clear and the playoffs doesn't look anywhere near. But do we now say, look, really like the look of Broadhead, what he's brought. He's been a really good player for us. We've got he's injured. How much would it take to bring him here permanently? And then if we can sort a permanent deal out for him and he wants to come, which he might not, but hopefully he does, you've then got a loan option freed up. And then you can also potentially have a player for, if we go up into the Championship or something that's going to benefit us in the years to come. Then I would imagine Alves is going back. You've got 2 loan places freed up. You can bring a striker in with one of them. Is that too utopian of me that we can just go and sign Broadhead and then get 2 good young loan players?
Probably, because as strange as it sounds, you probably have to have some kind of gentleman's agreement in place, because you don't know how it works with medicals nowadays. But obviously, trying to get past that stage in terms of for insurance and stuff and all the boring stuff that we don't know about, I can't imagine it would work out. So you'd need, it makes sense. And I think Lee Johnson's, that's one thing I'll give him. I think his man management's quite good. So I reckon he probably is in Nathan Broadhead's ear and kind of saying, listen, I need to free it up. I need players in this position. By the way, Sam Greenwood could be a shout for a loan deal. Just putting it out there.
Yeah, not a bad shout.
Yeah, so I think it's workable, and I think ultimately we have to protect the club and we have to get ourselves in a position to get automatic promotion. Unfortunately, Broadhead, even with fitness, by the time he comes back, maybe he's for 6 games, possibly at maximum. I think it's cutthroat, isn't it? I think you've got to free up the loan space, and you've got to try and get someone else in who's going to affect the game. Because we said at the beginning of the season, trying to preview the season, we were worried that if Ross Stewart got injured, where does it come from? Broadhead has stepped up and shown that he can do that. Granted, with Ross Stewart, but I tell you what, I wouldn't want Ross Stewart injured at the minute. My God, get us New Year's Day. I thought Johnson would have protected him about 10 minutes earlier today. I thought comfortable. I thought he would have brought Harris on.
That is the worry, that Aiden OBrien, who hasn't scored goals for Sunderland, 1 game aside, and a little flurry of goals last year, Aiden OBrien's not scored anywhere near the same rate as Broadhead or Stewart, and he realistically is the next step because he's more experienced than Harris, and Benjamin Kimpioke is just chaos football, isn't he? And as much as I like chaos, I don't know whether that's...
He's like a dog. He's like a dog chasing a balloon, isn't he?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, he's bulked up. Bloody hell, I don't know what he's been on the protein bars. But
I don't like to slate him because obviously he is a young lad, but he's like a dog chasing a balloon. And
from what we've seen,
I mean, when we were talking about O'Brien there last season, I think the back end of last season we've seen the best of O'Brien when he was doing the shitty, horrible work to create space for Charlie White.
Yeah.
But it's a completely different system that we're playing this year. And it's probably not suited O'Brien. I know he's scored the hat-trick in the League Cup and he's done okay when he's came in, but sometimes when you see when he comes on, he's not got that pace. I don't think he's got that, like, the bite of what the strikers that we have got.
It's just not got quality for me. He lacks quality.
I'll take the moral high ground. When we signed Aiden OBrien, I tweeted about him and I said he is a defensive left winger. And everyone, oh my God, he's been signed as a striker. I was like, I've actually seen the kid play. I've seen the bloke play. He is a defensive left winger, which there shouldn't really be such a thing, if I'm quite honest with you.
We've also got the option as well, talking to strikers. And it worked with Embleton last year, right? By sending them out on loan, getting some senior football, and you've seen we're reaping the rewards now because you got man of the match today. We've got the option to recall Josh Hawkes. Now, he scored for Sunderland under 23s last season. As far as I'm aware, I think Tranmere, they won him permanently because he's playing really well for them. When he's not scoring, he's assisting. We've got them options of bringing these players back in. And like I've said, if our targets aren't better than the lads we've got out on loan, which is Greg, which is Hawks, which is Diamond. Well, Diamond's not a 9, but you know what I mean? Like, we can't bring in players who are not going to be better than the ones we've got on loan. So we have got them options to bring them back in. And I think we all said at the start, Josh Hawks getting a loan, he's got the talent, he's got the ability. He's played senior football now in the EFL. If we need a striker, bring him back, in my opinion, because he knows where the goal is. But then when Dave said there, we brought Harris on. I like the look of him. I think he's raw, he's young. He has to look at it and think, and there's Dan Neal, they're coming through, so why not him? So this could be the perfect opportunity for him to think, right, I'm going to make my claim now. And if he comes in the next 3 or 4 games, maybe he gets a couple of sub appearances, maybe he's even one from the start, and scores 1 or 2 goals, then it opens it up for him, like for his pathway. And that's what we've been crying out for years, is letting the youth come through. So we have got them options within the club. It just depends. Can we sign someone who's better, or do we try and use them the best way we can?
Yeah, I personally think we need a few in the transfer market. We've coped with the injuries, but I don't want us to get the end of the season with all the players knackered. I want a bit of. But you know what? The one thing I would say, I'm not going to suggest anyone, because I actually have confidence for the first time in about 20 years in the recruitment team. They've done an all right job, and that's fair play to Speakman, because I'm very, very, very conscious of Sunderland and backroom staff and recruitment because of years of failure. But so far, so good. If you're listening, Christian, I'm sure you're not, but if you're on, mate, you've done a decent job so far. Don't fuck it up, right? Dave, we've got 3 minutes left. Same question as always, mate. What does that result mean in the context of Sunderland season?
Same again. I'm going to be that boring bastard. Means nothing unless we win next game. So, yeah, it's one of them. Just onwards and upwards. The one thing that I will say is it should breed confidence. You know, we're now back to the way that we started the season. We've got the ball. We're doing what we want. And I tell you what, there is a clear, concise idea of getting the ball through the lines very, very quickly. It was very evident today through not watching shitty EFL cameras and actual decent, pitches. We got the ball into the right players, i.e. Embleton, Neal, Pritchard, Gooch, Dejaku. We got it there quickly. So, yeah, and I just think the interesting thing will come when we're playing the likes of Sheffield, when we've got the likes of Rotherham and stuff again. Can we make the pitch a little bit narrower? Can we make it a little bit tighter when we haven't got the ball? Because on the ball, I have no worry about us whatsoever. We will score goals. Let's just not concede 5. That'd be nice. So, yeah, on the next one for me.
Brad, same question to you, mate. You've got a minute 56. Fire on.
Craig, I think it means quite a lot today, because today we move back into the top two. Big game coming up at with Chef Wed at home, and the lads know our home form's quite good. So knowing that they're in the top two and it's in our hands to stay in the top two going into the new year, I think today's result, but then you couple that with the performance, is quite a big thing. It's just like you say, Chef Wed's going to be a completely different challenge to Doncaster today, and it's how we push on from today's result to go against a team that's in and around the top 6, top 8, and then we see where we're at. We're going to the new year. If we're still in the top, if we're in the top 2 because we win on Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whichever day between Christmas and New Year, it'll mean a lot to the lads, and it means a lot to the fans as well.
I think we're all very happy, but I just want to point out before we do go, there's a car in the background making a wonderful noise. Just before I do let everyone go, please do subscribe if you get a second. And Brad, well done for making it through a half an hour pod with about 10 pints in you. Literally, I think about 10 pints. If anyone hears the slurring and the mention of Will Gregg's name being a viable option, that'll be the reason why.
I'll listen to this tomorrow and think, oh, what the fuck was I saying?
I do that sober, mate, but thanks for listening and thanks for joining.